She had never been educated within it. She didn't know anything about Black history and slavery, and so it was a very difficult, but I had love there, which was the most important thing.
Lewis Hamilton may have just become the latest victim of the Kardashian curse, and the timing is almost too perfect to ignore. For years, Hamilton seemed untouched by the chaos surrounding the Kardashian orbit. Then came the connection nobody saw coming. What started as a celebrity friendship soon became the subject of intense speculation after one unexpected moment changed everything. Now, old photographs and encounters are being viewed differently. So how did Hamilton end up here? To find out, we have to go back to where it began. The connection nobody saw coming. Kim Kardashian built an empire out of reality television, fashion, and shapewear, turning a name already famous into a business worth billions. What began with television exposure eventually expanded into beauty, fashion, branding, and a carefully managed public image that made Kardashian far more than a reality television personality. Her name became a global commercial brand, recognized far beyond the entertainment industry. Lewis Hamilton built a different kind of empire entirely, becoming the most successful driver in Formula One history through pure speed, relentless discipline, and years of extraordinary consistency on the track. His career transformed him from a young British racing prodigy into one of the most recognizable athletes in the world. Beyond Formula One, Hamilton also developed a strong presence in fashion, music, and popular culture, making his influence extend well beyond motorsport. On paper, a reality star from Calabasas and a race car champion from Stevenage, England, do not exactly look like an obvious match. Their professional worlds could hardly appear more different. Kardashian's career was built around entertainment, business, fashion, and constant interaction with the public. Hamilton's was built around competition, engineering, precision, and the unforgiving demands of elite motorsport. Their daily routines were different. Their industries were different. Even the worlds they represented seemed different. But there was one important similarity. Both operated at the highest level of global celebrity. That meant their professional circles inevitably overlapped. Major fashion events, award ceremonies, luxury brand campaigns, sporting events, celebrity parties, and international social gatherings regularly brought together people from entertainment, business, fashion, and sport. Hollywood and international sports circles overlap more often than most people realize, and these two names had actually been crossing paths for well over a decade before anyone thought to call it a romance. That is what makes the connection so interesting. It did not begin with two strangers suddenly meeting in the spotlight. Their worlds had already been close enough for their paths to intersect naturally, long before the public had any reason to view those encounters as significant. The connection that started it all. The very first documented public moment between them dates back to 2014 at the GQ Men of the Year ceremony, where photographs captured a friendly greeting between the two. At the time, Kardashian was still married, and Hamilton was still building his early championship legacy. There was nothing particularly dramatic about the interaction, and there was certainly no obvious reason for anyone watching to assume that the moment would become relevant years later. That is part of what makes looking back at it now so interesting. Celebrity events like the GQ Men of the Year ceremony are designed around proximity. Actors, athletes, musicians, designers, models, and business figures can all find themselves sharing the same room, sometimes for only a few minutes. A photograph can capture a conversation, a handshake, or a greeting that means absolutely nothing beyond the moment itself. And at the time, that appeared to be exactly what this was. Kardashian was already one of the most recognizable figures in entertainment, while Hamilton was establishing himself as one of Formula One's defining young talents. Their careers were moving along completely different tracks, but their increasing visibility placed them within many of the same international celebrity circles. Then came 2015. A year later, Hamilton was linked in gossip coverage to a much younger member of the same family, Kendall Jenner, following public sightings at races and fashion events. Those dating rumors were widely reported at the time, but never confirmed by either side, and the two eventually drifted into separate lives without ever addressing it directly. That distinction matters. Rumor and confirmation are not the same thing, particularly when dealing with celebrities whose private lives attract enormous media attention. Public sightings can create speculation almost instantly, but they do not necessarily establish a relationship. In Hamilton and Jenner's case, the story remained exactly that, a widely discussed possibility that neither publicly confirmed. Still, the episode created another connection between Hamilton and the Kardashian-Jenner family. His name was no longer simply appearing alongside Kim Kardashian's at major events. He was now being associated, through media speculation, with another prominent member of the family. And then, life moved on. Hamilton continued building his Formula One career. Kardashian continued expanding her public and business profile. Jenner pursued her own career in fashion and modeling. The headlines eventually moved elsewhere, and the earlier speculation faded into the background. The years they remained separate. Kardashian filed for divorce from Kanye West in early 2022, ending a highly publicized marriage and a family with 4 children. The divorce marked a major transition in her personal life, as her family, businesses, and individual identity increasingly took center stage. The following years were spent rebuilding a personal life largely out of the spotlight, with only a handful of brief public relationships along the way. Although Kardashian remained one of the most photographed women in the world, her private life did not always receive the same level of public access that her professional activities did. There was a distinction between being constantly visible and actually revealing what was happening behind the scenes. Hamilton, meanwhile, kept racking up championships and expanding a growing lifestyle and fashion brand well beyond the racetrack. His influence had increasingly moved beyond Formula One, with fashion becoming an important part of his public identity and partnerships extending his reach into wider popular culture. That expansion mattered because Hamilton was no longer being defined solely by what happened during a race weekend. His appearances at major fashion events, relationships with global brands, and presence within entertainment circles placed him in an increasingly broad network of international celebrities. Then came one of the biggest professional developments of his career. A major career move to Ferrari added even more attention to an already massive global profile heading into the 2026 season. The move carried enormous significance within Formula One because Ferrari represents one of the sport's most historically important and globally recognized teams. Hamilton's arrival therefore generated attention far beyond the usual racing audience. Meanwhile, Kardashian's own profile continued expanding across entertainment, fashion, business, and social media. Her world remained heavily connected to the same luxury brands, celebrities, sporting figures, and international events that Hamilton was increasingly moving through. So while their professional lives looked completely separate, the environments around them were not. Despite moving in entirely different professional directions, both names kept appearing at the same events, the same award shows, and eventually the same holiday parties, without either one making headlines as a couple, at least not yet. That distinction is important because proximity does not automatically mean romance. Famous people regularly attend the same events, share mutual friends, and appear in the same photographs without having any romantic connection whatsoever. For years, that seemed to be the simplest explanation here. Kardashian had her world, Hamilton had his. Their circles overlapped, but their lives remained separate enough that nobody had a compelling reason to connect the two stories. And so the years passed, with both continuing to build increasingly powerful public identities while remaining, at least publicly, on separate paths. The first romance reports. The current chapter of the story truly begins on New Year's Eve heading into 2026, at a gathering hosted by actress Kate Hudson. Kardashian and Hamilton were both spotted at the same party, standing close enough for photographers and fellow guests to notice. On its own, the appearance did not necessarily prove anything. New Year's Eve parties in celebrity circles routinely bring together people from entertainment, fashion, sport, and business, making shared appearances relatively common. But this particular sighting attracted attention because of what came next. Within weeks, entertainment outlets were already reporting something new. A source close to the situation told reporters the two were exploring a romantic relationship after years of simply being friends, describing growing comfort and chemistry between them. That description immediately changed the way people interpreted their previous interactions. What had previously looked like an ordinary friendship suddenly became something that could be viewed through a different lens. Importantly, the early reports relied on information attributed to sources rather than direct confirmation from Kardashian or Hamilton themselves. That distinction left room for uncertainty, but it did not stop the story from gathering momentum. Once the possibility of a relationship entered the entertainment news cycle, every subsequent appearance carried more significance. Around the same time, reports surfaced of a quiet overnight visit to an English countryside estate in the Cotswolds, arranged with private security and almost no public trace. The reported circumstances were notably different from the highly visible celebrity events where the pair had previously been seen. Instead of a crowded awards ceremony or major public gathering, this was described as a much more private setting. That detail naturally intensified speculation. Two extremely famous people would have obvious reasons to keep an early-stage relationship away from cameras, especially when both had spent years dealing with intense public scrutiny. The Cotswolds reports therefore added another layer to the emerging story. What had begun with a New Year's Eve sighting was now being followed by reports suggesting that their connection was becoming more personal and increasingly difficult for the public to dismiss as nothing more than friendship. From rumors to public appearances. By early February of 2026, a source told reporters the pair had shared a romantic meetup in Paris, adding real weight to weeks of speculation. Paris was significant not simply because of the location, but because it suggested that whatever had been building quietly through January was becoming increasingly difficult to describe as an ordinary friendship. The reports immediately added another layer to the story. Until then, much of the discussion had centered on sightings, shared spaces, and information attributed to people close to the situation. A reported romantic meetup, however, suggested that the relationship had moved into a different stage. Whatever had been building quietly through January was clearly no longer just a friendship. Then came the moment that made it impossible to ignore. On February 8, 2026, Kardashian and Hamilton were spotted sitting side by side in a private suite at the Super Bowl, chatting comfortably in full view of cameras and fellow attendees throughout the game. The setting itself guaranteed enormous attention. The Super Bowl is one of the most watched sporting events in the world, and a private suite filled with celebrities is almost always a magnet for photographers. Neither side confirmed anything that night. They did not have to. Photos and video clips spread across social media within minutes, with fans and entertainment accounts immediately dissecting every visible interaction between them. By the next morning, the conversation had shifted significantly. The question was no longer simply whether something was happening between Kardashian and Hamilton. It was how serious it already was. What followed over the next several months looked less like a normal dating timeline and more like a shared travel itinerary. There was a getaway to Arizona, followed by a trip through the desert with matching sunset photos posted within the same window of time. None of these individual moments necessarily provided definitive proof on their own, but together they contributed to an increasingly consistent public pattern. The pair's outings were also becoming steadily less private. In April, Kardashian and Hamilton were spotted together at the Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival, mixing into a crowd of thousands while still managing to be noticed within minutes. Photos from the festival spread quickly, adding yet another data point to an already obvious pattern. By June, Kardashian and Hamilton were seen walking arm in arm through the streets of Tokyo, smiling for fans ahead of the Japanese Grand Prix. The image was considerably more open than the discreet sightings that had fueled the earliest speculation. That appearance was followed soon after by a relaxed appearance together in Malibu. At that point, the situation had changed considerably. The relationship was clearly no longer a secret to anyone paying attention. The confirmation that changed everything. On July 16, 2026, Hamilton finally ended months of speculation with a single Instagram post. After weeks of photographs, public appearances, and growing attention surrounding his relationship with Kardashian, the post represented a significant change in how openly the pair were willing to present themselves. The carousel included quiet, personal photos, rather than the kind of polished images normally associated with a major celebrity announcement. There was a lake outing, a shared moment on a boat, and an image showing Hamilton with an arm wrapped around Kardashian, who wore a hoodie from Hamilton's own lifestyle brand. None of the photographs appeared designed to create a dramatic spectacle. That was precisely what made the post so significant. Instead of issuing a formal statement, giving an interview, or making a carefully staged appearance together, Hamilton appeared to let the photographs speak for themselves. The message was understated, but the meaning was difficult to miss. After months of speculation, there was no longer much reason to pretend the relationship was simply a matter of two celebrities occasionally appearing in the same places. The post also represented a noticeable shift from the way the relationship had initially been discussed. Earlier reports had depended heavily on sightings, photographs, and information attributed to sources. Now, Hamilton himself was publicly placing Kardashian inside a collection of personal moments shared with his audience. The caption was short, a simple note about holding loved ones close. But that message carried extra weight because of the timing. The very same day, Kris Jenner shared the sad news that her own mother, Mary Jo Shannon, had passed away at the age of 91. Fans quickly noticed both posts landing within hours of each other, adding a layer of real emotional weight to what might otherwise have simply been read as a fun celebrity confirmation. The timing created a striking contrast between a relationship becoming more public and a deeply personal loss affecting the Kardashian family on that same day. It also meant that the day carried two completely different kinds of public attention. For Hamilton, it was a moment of openness after months of speculation. For the Kardashian family, it was also a day of grief and remembrance. Those two stories happened to intersect within the same news cycle, giving the Instagram post a significance that went beyond celebrity gossip. Sometimes the biggest headlines and the hardest days end up arriving on the exact same afternoon. Online, however, the conversation quickly moved in another direction. Plenty of commentators immediately reached for an old nickname, the Kardashian Kurse. The phrase refers to an internet theory that dating into this particular family somehow brings a wave of bad luck, controversy, or professional problems for the men involved. The idea has circulated for years, largely because several high-profile relationships connected to the Kardashian family eventually ended amid significant public scrutiny or personal and professional difficulties. For supporters of the theory, those examples become evidence of a recurring pattern. For everyone else, they are simply the normal complications that come with relationships involving extremely famous people. Either way, the nickname remains powerful because it turns complicated personal histories into a simple, highly shareable narrative. Hamilton's situation provided a fresh opportunity for that theory to circulate. The theory got a fresh test just days after Hamilton's public confirmation. At the Belgian Grand Prix, Hamilton picked up a time penalty after contact with another driver and was involved in an awkward pit stop mishap that briefly startled a mechanic, though nobody was hurt. For social media commentators already watching for signs of the supposed curse, the timing was almost too convenient. Posts and comments quickly framed the incidents as evidence that the Kardashian effect had finally caught up with Hamilton. A normal Formula One incident suddenly became part of a much larger internet storyline. But the actual championship standings told a very different story. That same result still moved Hamilton up into second place overall for the season. Hardly the outcome anyone would expect from a supposed curse doing its worst. A penalty or awkward pit lane moment can certainly become headline material, but neither automatically represents a meaningful collapse in a driver's season. In fact, the contrast reveals something important about the curse theory itself. Once people expect a particular pattern, ordinary events can suddenly appear to confirm it. A difficult race becomes evidence. A bad photograph becomes evidence. A disappointing headline becomes evidence. Anything that fits the narrative gets remembered. Anything that does not fit tends to disappear. That does not make the theory real. It simply demonstrates how quickly a familiar celebrity narrative can shape the way people interpret unrelated events. Since the July confirmation, Kardashian and Hamilton have continued appearing together at public events without hiding a single bit of it. What started as quiet dinners and unconfirmed sightings has turned into one of the most openly discussed celebrity relationships of the entire year. The relationship has therefore moved through several distinct stages: speculation, observation, public scrutiny, and finally, open acknowledgement. From a quick hello more than a decade ago to a relationship that eventually became impossible to ignore, Lewis Hamilton and Kim Kardashian took the long way to this moment. But with the Kardashian curse now attached to his name, the real question is whether this is just coincidence or the beginning of something much stranger. What do you think? Drop your take below and hit like and subscribe for more.